What's up, guys? I'll tell you that you've already made a copy of this lesson on the Incas. Don't worry, it's not going to take you too long. That being said, make sure you're listening because there are a time or two. Have you open a link or do this review here to begin? And yes, you'll have plenty of time to work on your posters, which are at the front of the room, unless the sub mess with them or something, in the second part of your day. It is important to note that next time I see you in person, Tuesday, we are going to have a small quiz, but it's just going to be over the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas, and we're going to do it at the end of class. In fact, Tuesday will be more of a work flex day where you'll have a chance to finish your project, do a little review on the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas, and get yourself all ready before we head into the quiz. So just know that that's on your way next week, which should give some encouragement to do today's sub work relatively well. You're going to begin. I didn't mean to play the video. You'll begin with this 5-minute review that you'll answer in the slots at the top of your Inca lesson. You can pause it and just simply answer these. When you're ready, you can come back to notes, your listing achievements of the Mayans and Aztecs, a stereotype about Native Americans, and then what specific method the Mayans and Aztecs used to farm, all of which have been shared in your notes, the last two classes and titles that include quiz corrections of Mayans, and then I think the Aztecs one is simply just called, copy of the Aztecs from Unit 4. So look in your Google Drive for help if you need it. When you're ready, come back and resume the video. Take it you're ready at this point. One thing we need to know about Incas, starting off with slide 1 here, is that at the peak of their powers, their existence is actually the farthest along in world history we've been to this point in terms of getting close to modern times now, 2023. Their capital is named Cuzco or Cuzco, depending on who you're listening to. But honestly, and you'll have a chance to visit it later, Machu Picchu up in the Andes Mountains might be the most famous location of any of their cities and things like that. At its peak, it had over 2 million people living in it, 14,000 miles of roads. They ruled in dynasties. If I was in class, I might call people like, hey, what civilization or area of the world does that make you think of? And, someone would say, oh, that's like China. And they're two totally different continents, but they ruled in kind of a similar governmental sort of way. They had their emperor was named Asapa Inca, which would make sense considering the name of the civilization. And again, 10 million people, that goes against the grain a little bit with the idea of natives always being in small hunter-gatherer groups, the way they're maybe depicted in movies and TV shows and things like that. Headed off to slide 2. The Andes Mountains are synonymous or associated with the Inca civilization, including, you can see on the west coast of this map in South America, all the mountain ranges. They're kind of depicted in red with the snow-capped mountains. It did put quite a bit of a demand on agriculture and how they could grow food and unifying the empire. That's why those thousands of miles of roads were so important, as you wrote down in slide 1. Also, you see the thing with the 14,000 miles of roads, but their form of farming, we've obviously learned about two, you wrote them down in your review, that is associated with the Incas, is known as terrace farming, which I'm no farmer, but the easiest way to describe it is like cutting staircases into the sides of mountains, which you can see depicted, I guess, above my head right now. And that would allow them to grow crops and resources in a way, despite their territory and terrain being so mountain based, which generally speaking, mountains are a little harder to grow crops on. But they were able to utilize terrace farming. Might be a good thing to draw in your Inca column when you're working on your chart a little bit later. Machu Picchu is perhaps the most famous thing that's associated with the Incas. You can see the city depicted here. It utilized a lot of terrace farming. The structures are still visited to this day. It's an extremely popular place to visit. It's kind of like an Eiffel Tower, a Statue of Liberty, a Great Wall of China, Pyramids of Egypt deal in terms of how historic and iconic it is as like a feature of the world in a historic place that you can still see to to this day. Speaking of which, you're actually going to have an opportunity to do this if I can escape from these slides for a second. Um, and you will click on the website that says 3D Tour. If you want to explore around for a few minutes, you can do so. This website is actually really cool. It gives you the ability to go to different overlooks as if you were in Machu Picchu. I guess I'm looking at a bunch of rocks there, but you can actually see you can see the terrace farming there set up, and it's just like you're visiting the location on like a vacation or something. So feel free to go through that, the different overlooks, the heart of it. It's actually kind of interesting. When you're ready, though, come back and you'll finish the back part of the lesson, which picks up with religion and society. The Sapa Inca, that was the name of their ruler, if you have forgotten from the first couple of slides. Their Sapa Inca held absolute power and believed himself basically to be the son of the sun, which they revered and saw as holy. It's not so different from the Egyptian pharaoh, excuse me, with the belief in Amun Re or Amun Ra, if you recall any of that. Okay, the empire's religious and military leader managed a system that they called Mita, which was sort of a form of tribute and a labor system that the Incas had. Um, we'll do this kind of all in one bunch. The nobles would rule locally for the emperor. So there was the Sapa Inca, then he delegated nobles to control different parts of the Inca Empire, and a little bit more in the Mita system. It basically set up it's not so different than feudalism in China, where citizens would do volunteer labor for the good of the empire. So in a sense, it was like a form of taxes just through self volunteer and self work, self labor. There was no personal property. Citizens wouldn't have owned anything themselves, like people are able to have houses today and things like that. And records, you can see the string here from a museum. Looks like the American Museum of, what does this say? Natural history. They tracked their records and had a form of writing through quipus, which was the tying of knots and colored strings. A lot of times, kids will like to include this in um, their flow charts they're doing, and it's easy to draw. And they'll have the colored strings. Sometimes kids will recreate the numbers 1 through 9 in quipus, which could be a cool idea for your visuals on the Incas. I included some different visuals of their social class as well as some extra information you can use potentially for your project as well on the Incas. And per usual, like I had with the Aztecs and the Mayans, there's an article with additional info if you felt like the notes did not give you enough to work with when building that final column on your assignment. Speaking of which, you have the rest of the class. There's a video if you want to watch on the rise and fall of the Inca Empire linked in your lesson. And then you have, just as a reminder, you've seen this before, that 30-point project that we're going to get turned in next class. So work hard. You don't necessarily have to be 100% done by the end of class today, but you should be nearing the end by the time, when does your class end today? 9:03. 124, whatever, you should feel pretty close to being completed. You can put your poster back to where you're getting it today if you don't trust yourself to bring it back on Tuesday. But if you want to take it with you, because there's a sub in the room and not me for safekeeping, you may also do that as long as it's in the room with you somewhere when we have class on Tuesday. Okay, that's everything. Email me if you have any really important questions that come up either today or over the weekend. Thanks for following.